So good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to see so many people in the early morning session on a free office day. It's both a great pleasure and a great privilege to present you my research. So a big thank, first of all, to Dominic and to the team all around the room for this opportunity. My talk today is based on my current book project, where I deal with interaction of capital mobility and local politics in Eurasia. My book is about Ukraine and Russia, but we are at the Danyliw seminar, so I will talk about Ukraine today. So in this interaction of global money and local politics, my focus is on business elites. And especially I'm interested in big business elites who are both globally integrated into global economic and financial markets and politically influential. Because these elites, these big business elites, they play the role of transmitter from global influences of markets to domestic politics of Ukraine. So how these elites are doing after Maidan? There is big consensus. They are doing pretty well. They still matter in Ukrainian politics. Oligarchic rule in Ukraine endures. They pretty fast adapted to a new political setting, to a new parliamentary presidential system. They kept their dominance in media landscape and also in economic sectors. But there is a big disagreement about what kind of functions they still to play in Ukrainian politics. So we can say there are two main narratives on this. The first narrative say, okay, so big business is relative goodness for Ukraine because these are people actually who supported liberal opposition in Ukraine, and in this way hindered the consolidation of authoritarian rule during the presidency of Yanukovych. So they still ensure certain competitiveness in Ukrainian politics these days, and so also relevant media plurality by default, then they ensure Ukrainian democracy. So furthermore, in the times of conflict, they supported and helped to keep control under some southeastern regions for new Ukrainian state authorities. So in this sense, they are even safeguarding Ukrainian integrity and sovereignty. But there is also another narrative. In this narrative, Ukrainian oligarchs and big business like absolute evil. They are responsible for persistent corruption and patronage. They are the main obstacles to any kind of reform and obstacle to approximation of Ukraine with European Union. They can and still manipulate Ukrainian public opinion and even used their influences in volunteer battalions for their business interest, and in this sense they undermine legal order and even represent the threat to security. So it's not surprising that any reform recommendations for Ukraine these days have something in common. They suggest you need to provide some reforms to fight this corruption, this systemic corruption, and go for the oligarchization of Ukrainian politics and economics. And in all these recommendations, there are two pitfalls. So first, this recommendation either see big business as an evil, absolute evil, and this evil need to be dismantled, absolutely. So this kind of recommendations, they overlook and neglect the possibilities that actually big business can transform our times. They can also follow different preferences in business and politics. And the second stream of recommendations says, okay, we had to live with this big business, so let's go for the minimum, cutting ties between business and politics. But there is also pitfall in these recommendations because they usually are limited to reform in domestic dimension, and they neglect the fact that big business in Ukraine doesn't stop its activities on Ukrainian borders. It is globally integrated, and so it's globalized business, and Ukrainian oligarchy has not only domestic but also international dimension. So I suggest to take into this de-oligarchization discussion this missing part in the puzzle, how to tame oligarchy in Ukraine, and include big business itself into this discussion. Thereby, I would suggest to go beyond this good and evil discussion and look at them just like rational actors with their cost-benefits calculations, to have more ideas what kind of preferences they have, and these ideas are provided already with political economy, and look how can we tame this oligarchy, not only through pushing for reforms in the domestic context of Ukraine, but also what can we do directly internationally. Let's start with business preferences. This big business is a uniform group, and they have only bad preferences and interest. If we look what political economy says, then we can see that actually there are at least two different types of business elites. So big business can have two faces. First, we can have a roving business who has very short time horizons, interested in capital accumulation. Then they usually behave as a corporate radar in a bad way as regards corporate standards. This behavior is also associated with promoting of autocracy and actually predatory state. Another phase of big business are so-called stationary actors. This business is more interested in capital security because of long-term time horizons. Then naturally it's keen to have its property rights secure. This type of business is also associated with good corporate governance, with promotion of democracy, even if it's not their genuine interest. And so at the end we come up with developmental state. The good news is also that these two phases is not just different types, but it's also stages in the development of business. In the evolutionary and endogenously initiated development, roving business can transform into stationary business, but there is also chance to influence this transformation exogenously from outside, pushing for some factors in the context where business operates. So, of course, the context of Ukrainian politics offers a lot of opportunities to keep big business behave as roving business. So, but I argue there are good chances that global dimension in the operational activities of business elites provide some pushing factors to transform roving business into stationary one. So big business, Ukrainian big business, belongs to so-called emerging multinational in the global economic markets and especially at the global financial markets. They are front runners in taking syndicated credits, in issuing Eurobonds and IPOs, initial public offerings, so selling shares at the international stocks exchange. And while doing this, they are exposed to conditionality of these global financial markets. So they have to comply with certain demands, so more transparency, more accountability, and also certain standards of good corporate governance need to be met when they borrow at these international markets. So there are certain incentives and risks. So all these points are associated with behavior of stationary business. So how this mechanism works? Again, illustration here, financial internationalization, push for change in economic preferences. These economic preferences and behavior are then implemented in political strategies of business, and then in the bargaining we see as an outcome certain set of institutions that represented then political regime or even state type. What the reality says. So let's check the first link about economic behavior. So the theory says that if business is more internationalized, then we had to expect better corporate governance. If we take two more extreme, extreme cases in Ukrainian business groups, Igor Kolomoisky and Group Privat, and Rinat Akhmetov with SKM Holding, we can see that actually there is some truth in these theoretical predictions, but it seems that the transformative power of this conditionality of financial global markets doesn't work pretty well. So there is a kind of lagging effect in it. So if we look at the second part, at the influence of this conditionality on political strategy, then it's even inconsistent with what we would expect theoretically. Roving bandits are rather supporting democracy, of course, not directly supporting democracy, rather they support and confront incumbent ruler, and in this way, by default, they support democracy, while stationary bandits actually seems to be allies of autocrats and are very cooperative to the incumbent rulers. So it seems like we need to revise this theoretical mechanism, and there are some factors that influence it. What kind of factors this might be? So first of all, many of these activities at the financial markets are done via offshore and inshore that help to escape this conditionality, or at least to diminish its power. So we know the practices, money laundering, or even illegal tax avoiding. Then the most devastating effect is institutional arbitrage, when the leverage of this transformative conditionality is compromised, and instead of pushing to secure property rights within the country, business elites are able to secure their property rights by EU law, for example. So another factor is that influence especially the implementation of these economic preferences into political strategies is how much resources, political resources, these business groups have at their disposal. And so if the political ties are very thick, then we are expecting that big business will secure its property rights through cooperation with the incumbent rulers, while when these ties are sparse, they will rather confront them and go for risk minimization strategy. So what are the takes? from my research, first of all, that indeed the conditionality of these financial markets works, but its effects are compromised, first of all, by the fact that this financial internationalization are done via these offshore jurisdictions, and the second, the domestic politics, the way business is integrated and embedded in Ukrainian politics also can compromise these positive influences. So at the end, global money and local politics in Ukraine are still responsible and will have as a result so-called crook capitalism, hybrid regime, and even competitive kleptocracy. Thank you.